I just watch at least 2, if not 3 of my students have a conversation while they're on meeting, all the way through our major AP assessment test. Yes, and I recorded it. So there's no audio, but it's painfully obvious what they're doing. Unbelievable. So now I have to send my, well, see, what they might have been doing is speaking with people from second bell who've taken long Wednesday bells, split it up. Yeah, long anyway, usually ambiguous threat. You're on tape, you're recorded, this is painfully obvious. Send me an email today, exactly with whom you're speaking. We'll be going to March Madness to Fisher's office tomorrow morning and watching 30 minutes of video and having a conversation with someone. Then they're going to all text each other. And the people second bell won't want to get exposed because they don't have to. It's going to be a real fun day tomorrow. Sorry for the delay, everybody. I was finishing an AP test live. Wait a couple more minutes here. Okay, I think we can get started. Okay, get the screen straight here, sorry.
Okay. So obviously, if you still have not for some reason, make sure and submit your corrections to that last vocab test and let me know at this point, since that would be late. I saw a few people saying they got everything right, but not putting anything on there. Okay, so we've been through this 8 times. I need to see the corrections. If there are none, then you need to write 25 out of 25 on the top or something like that. Pretty simple. Okay, so we're into the next vocab unit. That was supposed to be completed by last night. Not going to be able to go over that. I was out with a couple appointments on Monday. We had a snow day yesterday. We're home today. We might not even be back tomorrow if there's enough teachers with side effects from our vaccinations, which we're getting today. So I don't have my vocab materials at home, so we'll just wait. We'll go over that next time I'm able to access it, but those have been checked. You do have a grammar lesson due tonight. Don't forget about that. That's the last one in the unit on parts of the sentence, which means we'll have a vocab test sometime next week. Let somebody in real fast here. Okay, so in the Odyssey, we're kind of weird in between. You finished books 10 and 11, or should have for Monday night. And I put off going over those until today. Gave you the day off yesterday because I knew we'd be live today. So we'll review those if you want to maybe kind of start accessing those. And then you should, if you haven't already, you should be finishing up reading the 6-page section of book 12 and finishing those questions by tonight. We'll have another one, but with a long weekend. Got to stay on pace to finish the Odyssey in time to start 1984. For the last half of this quarter. It's a long novel. It's like twice as long as Mice and Men, so we need to get going on that. There are many of you who've still not gotten that novel. Okay, so I started handing it out early because I know with things being weird, it might take a little while to get this distributed. But especially those of you in the school, I mean, just come by 233, say hi. Love to see you in person anyway. You know, if you gotta fess up, you gotta find that Of Mice and Men book. Okay, we gotta return that and check that book number. I've got to be responsible for those. And again, if you are dropping off, if you drop off and don't return your Of Mice and Men book, then you're going to be hearing from me because I have to get that back. If you had a copy of your own, then you would have told me that early and you remind me, and I've probably got that somewhere in my records. But just make sure and follow those instructions, and you should be all good. Any questions about any of that? Okay. Let me switch over to I'm gonna go to the text here, see if I can move myself and you guys around enough where I can look at that. That's the section you're starting next. Are you guys seeing my flip book here? Yes, nod heads. Okay, good. Okay, so you guys read Circe, Grace of the Witch. We had some kind of paraphrased stuff here. You got to pay attention to that because it kind of covers a series of events that aren't really depicted here straight from the Odyssey text. And there's more of that down here, right? And then we should have read Land of the Dead after Circe tells him to go there, talks to some people, see some random people there. That's kind of weird. And receive some prophecies from the blind prophet Tiresias. And then there's some other stuff here that's kind of paraphrased to lead us into what you are reading now. Most of you have probably already started at least the Siren, Scylla, and Charybdis, and that's about a 6-page long section that we will be discussing tomorrow. Okay, so if you guys have accessed your questions, we zoom in a little bit here so we can see the text a little bit. So the first question was about, Homeric simile, epic simile, same thing, use those terms interchangeably, right? And there was kind of a note of this in the text too. It's not comparing, the lines are right here. Wolves and mountain lions lay there, mild in her soft spell, fed on her drug of evil. None would attack. Oh, it was strange, I tell you, but switching their long tails, they faced our men like hounds, keyword like there, who look up when their master comes with tidbits for them, as he will from table. Humbly, those wolves and lions with mighty paws fawned on our men who met their yellow eyes and feared them. Okay, so it's not wolves being compared to mountain lions. It's the wolves, mountain lions, and what other animals that are there are being compared to what? Remember, in a Homeric or epic simile, it's always something weird and supernatural and unrealistic compared to and brought down to earth by a situation that sounds more familiar to, like, you know, regular old human beings. So what's the comparison there? I've got a chat. Hounds, and what they mean by hounds is, thank you, Abigail, is like domesticated dogs, right? So what does that comparison kind of show us about the effect of Cersei's haul and just kind of what things are like there? What does it tell her about us? You know, you're kind of inferring or guessing here, but what does it seem to kind of suggest? Let's speak up, participate. I can't see you raising hands because I'm screen sharing. I can only see a few cubes at a time. So just, speak up.
The lions aren't really vicious.
That's what's happening. But what does the fact that those animals are not vicious maybe tell us about Cersei's place? Can we kind of guess?
It's not as bad as it seems.
That could be guessed, and when Polites decides to like go on in, right? That's what he's thinking. But what else could it suggest if you're more in the mindset of like Eurylochus? That something about this place is what? Totally normal, guys? Totally normal for these wild animals to be all tame? Doesn't it kind of seem to suggest that she has some kind of like supernatural powers or weirdness here? Something's kind of off, right? And then when you think about what happens to Odysseus's men later, and we'll get to that, then you think, oh gosh, maybe all these wild animals were people, right? And they've been turned into animals and are just hanging out here. Okay, so we don't know. Okay, but it's mysterious, is my point, right? It's really mysterious. Okay, so speaking of what I just said, would you follow Odysseus's soldier who was saying, hey, let's go on in here, this looks great, like you guys are saying it seems, maybe safe, like a nice place? Or would you listen to Eurylochus, who feared a snare, which is the same guy who feared a snare when they were near the Cyclops, right? He tried to warn Odysseus. Well, regardless of which you would fear, who turns out to be right? The guy who what? Thought they should what? You guys are awful quiet today. No one wants to earn participation. Well, naturally, you would hope that you would listen to the guy, Eurylochus, who fears a snare, because it very much was a snare, right? They got trapped, they got put under a spell. What else happens to them? Lines 27 through 36, a little bit tricky to read here, but looking here, on thrones she seated them with, wait, that's not the right line numbers, 36. Okay, starting right around here, gives them this wine, right? Adding her own vile pinch, in other words, some kind of secret potion to make them lose desire or thought of our dear fatherland. That's part of it, but scarce had they drunk when she flew after them with her long stick and shut them in a pigsty, bodies, voices, heads, and bristles, all swinish now, though their minds still unchanged. So squealing, in they went, and Cersei tossed them acorns, masks, cornel berries, etc., etc. In other words, what did Cersei do to the men?
Turns them into pigs.
Yeah, who was that talking?
How about Ethan?
Ethan, thank you, Ethan. Yes, she turns them into pigs, and that's probably kind of metaphorical, right? Because they've been, pigs have connotations of being greedy and sloppy and eating a lot, right? Which isn't exactly correct, but and that his men are kind of being pigs in general, right? And so it's like this woman figure like kind of serves them right and turns them literally into pigs. Almost kind of funny. Okay. After that, so some time goes by, right? They've forgotten all, and if you're reading the whole thing, like some time really goes by. The better part of a year they're there, though, right? But they finally figure it out. She's convinced to change him back after Odysseus stays there for a while, and then eventually, as she's letting them go, what does she tell Odysseus that he has to do? Where does he have to go, and to whom does he have to speak? That's what we're looking for, number 4. Tell us that. Hint, hint with my mouse here.
he has to go to the land of the dead and hear a prophecy from a ghost.
Thank you. A ghost of what person? What's that name there? It might be hard to pronounce, but it's some prophet, right, named Tiresias, and he pops up as this wise prophet who just kind of lives forever in the land of the dead, in all kinds of old myths, right? And so he's like this fortune teller, and it's kind of this stereotype cliche of like going to this like old grizzled wizard guy, and he like tells you what to do next, right? After telling what your quest is. There's a really funny thing of that. If you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's like a good satire of that. And so he gives him all these prophecies about what's going to happen, right? But in the meantime, when he goes there, before he talks to Tiresias, we got a lot of imagery describing the land of the dead, right? It's kind of weird with Greek mythology because they don't really have like a pleasant heaven and an unpleasant hell. They just have the land of the dead, right? So what does it seem like? Does it seem like a heaven-ish place, or does it seem more kind of hell-ish place?
Hellish.
Absolutely. It's scary, mysterious, creepy, and it sets like a really eerie mood for Odysseus before he even runs into anybody, right? Mostly visual elements, right? So they create this really ominous element. But then, just kind of looking at number 6 as a whole, he runs into, before he finds Tiresias, he runs into 2 different people. Who are each of those people, and what does he find out from them? By the time we finish reading it, we learn that he finds out what from them. You can just give us one of them. Or both. Who does he have conversations with? Neither of which he even knew was dead, but are now in the land of the dead, so now he knows they're dead, which is kind of odd.
Didn't his mother die?
His mother died, and he encounters her there, has a conversation with her on the way in, and then talks with her more on his way out. Thanks, Sandia. And he learns from her that she took her own life, died of a broken heart, and that and he learns more about that the suitors, the guys who were like kind of like forcefully courting his wife and abusing his son and his estate, and that whole situation. He's learning more and more about that. And that his father moved by himself out to the country to like be a hermit or something. Okay, good. Who's the other guy? Or who's the guy that he runs into that he knew? Which is really strange time sequence wise. Are we confused? Toward the bottom of the page here. Who's Elpenor? Almost kind of a funny story how Elpenor ends up there. Okay, you guys are obviously confused here. Let's kind of read through this. So one shade, like a ghost, a dead person came first. Elpenor of our company, in other words, one of his soldiers, right, who lay unburied still on the wide earth as we had left him, dead in Circe's hall, untouched, unmourned, where other cares compelled us. And when I saw him there, I wept for pity and I called out to him. Other page here. How is this, Elpenor? How could you journey to the western gloom swifter afoot than I in the black lugger? How are you already in the land of the dead when we didn't even know you were dead, let alone how did you get here before us, right? And that's what happens. You're just kind of like teleported, I guess, to the land of the dead, right? So he sighs and he answers and he says, basically tells him that he was partying really hard and drinking a lot of wine at Circe's house, and he fell off the roof and broke his neck. That was a rough weekend. Okay, so he ends up in the land of the dead. Really random story there. But it just kind of shows like, the weird time sequences of the surreal places that Odysseus and his crew are going in and out of. There's things beyond their control. And his guys are being kind of idiots, right? And paying the price, and he keeps losing more and more of them. And that continues to happen as we get toward the end here. We have more of the story kind of paraphrased right here. So he ends up talking to Tiresias, and he gives him all these prophecies about what's going to happen. The biggest one, besides getting past a few monsters, is that he's going to, and we've heard this kind of idea before, that he's going to go past this place called Thrinacia, where the sun god lives, and he has this herd of cattle, right? Avoid those kind, Tiresias says. Kind is like a word for like a herd of cattle. Hold fast to your intent, and hard seafaring brings you back to Ithaca. In other words, even though you're starving, don't take these cattle as food. They belong to the sun god. They're immortal. But if you raid the beeves, I see destruction for your ship and crew. Though you survive alone, bereft of all companions, lost for years under strange sail, you shall come home to find your own house filled with trouble. Insolent men eating your livestock. Okay, so Odysseus is going to have to try to get his men to not take the cattle of the sun god Helios. If they do, he'll come home by himself and he'll be able to take care of business, but he's still going to try to save them, right? Well, what happens? We find out in the next section, right? So that starts here. Perhaps you've already read. There's some really crazy monsters here that are often alluded to in a lot of different literature. The sirens, Scylla, and Charybdis. And Scylla and Charybdis are kind of right next to each other. It's kind of two separate adventures. This one and then this one. Now you notice, and I explained in the video, I hope you guys are using my video. You'll probably be less, if you've been confused, you're probably less confused if you're not using my video to read this. So they return to Circe's island after being in the land of the dead. And then Circe starts giving him some more advice about how to get through the stuff that's coming up next for him, in order for him to try to get home. Okay. Everybody straight on anything? Does anybody have any more questions? Nothing? Okay. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you live tomorrow, either from school or home. I don't know yet. There's a chance we might be all remote tomorrow if too many teachers have side effects from the vaccinations today. We'll see how that goes. Wish us luck. See ya.